Lenine walked toward the dining hall, still thinking of the promise. She believed Tewakan was not the kind of man who broke his word. He had told her not to forget. He was surely still waiting. She hurried into the dining room and curtsied gracefully. Lord Tewakan. The room was empty. Only an overturned chair lay on the floor. He had left. She slowly righted the chair, heart sinking. She had disappointed him terribly. She didn't blame him. She sat alone, picked at the breakfast laid out for two, and tried to imagine him sitting across from her. It would have been warm, peaceful. Now the room felt cold and lonely. Tears welled up. I can't eat anymore, she whispered, setting down her fork. Just as she rose to leave, the doors burst open. Tewakan rushed in, breathing hard, sweat on his brow. He had clearly run the whole way. Lenine froze. Lord Tewakan. He stared at her, eyes wide. Why are you here? He crossed the room in 3 strides, dropped to one knee beside her chair, and braced his hands on the armrests, caging her in. Why are you here? He repeated, softer but urgent. Confused, she answered, why do you ask that? Then her voice fell. I didn't want to break my promise. His face clouded. Did you think I would do something if you didn't show up? Are you still afraid of me? No, that's not it, she said quickly. I just wanted to keep my word. I wanted to be here, even if it was only me. He'll never make a promise like that again, she thought. But that doesn't mean I didn't hope. Lord Tewakan, if I disappointed you. He cut her off gently. No, that's not it. He reached out and brushed the bruises on her wrist, the marks Lyndon had left. You're hurt. She blinked in surprise. It's nothing. He stayed kneeling, thumb tracing the purple marks. Does it hurt? I told you, it's not serious. His voice cracked with quiet anguish. It hurts me. I got the report and ran straight to your room, but you weren't there. Lenine's heart melted. This man, he wasn't angry with her at all. He was worried. How strange and how precious. She repeated softly, it's really not serious. He looked up at her, eyes full of pain. I'm not just talking about your wrist. Everything has been so cruel to you, far beyond what you should have to endure. Lenine's tears welled up, her voice trembled with emotion. You must have heard what happened in the study. I said I would kill you. I really did. She turned away in shame, asking permission to leave. Tewakan did not reproach her even a little. Instead, he spoke calmly, as though confessing a long-held secret. It is true. Long ago, my family was murdered. I wandered, grew up steeped in hatred, and slowly the hatred faded. I found things more important than mere survival. He went on, voice low. And the reason I chose you as my fiancé. I didn't want anyone else to take you from me. Because we were promised to each other when we were children. You don't remember, but I'm 2 years older, so I do. My father betrothed me to House Arsak. After my kin were killed, the betrothal was broken. But now I have returned, and I realized I want it again. I want to reclaim what was mine. I want you, my original fiancé. So that was it. The man she had been promised to from the beginning was him. All the harsh terms, everything he had done without regard for himself while worrying only for her, it suddenly made sense. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Why didn't you tell me from the start? He gave a bitter smile. How could you have believed me? Only I remembered that promise. If she had known sooner, she thought, he wouldn't have suffered all these suspicions, and she wouldn't have had to lie about the child. His hand rose to her cheek, gently brushing away the tears. Her face flushed crimson. The way he had crashed into her life, one shock after another. Tewakan looked into her eyes and asked slowly. Do you love me? He leaned closer, waiting. Lenine's heart pounded, she could only manage a tiny, shy He pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. They circled each other a little longer, still tangled in the lingering knot of revenge. He looked away, conflicted. She hesitated, because she loved him, but she loved Nock even more. Back in her room, Lenine sat on the bed. You don't have to worry so much about my affairs, she said. They're trivial. To him, nothing about her was trivial. Anything that concerns you is important to me, he answered simply. She sighed. That high priest has always been like that. The words made Tewakan's blood boil again. Always? So this wasn't the first time? The thought of how she had endured it all made his chest ache. He returned to the bedside. Give me your hand. I'll put the ointment on. As he gently applied the medicine, the scene in the carriage flashed through his mind. She had never intended any of it. Lapid had forced himself on her. Which meant, she had never willingly carried his child. She would never have chosen that man. And that was all Tawakan needed to know. Because Lenine Arsak had always been his fiancée. His eyes softened. He eased her down onto the pillows and tucked the blanket around her. You need rest. Even if you feel fine, the baby might not. Lenine blinked, completely lost. The baby. Why are you suddenly talking about the baby? Tawakan immediately asked who the castle physician was, already halfway to the door. Lenine's face turned bright red. She tugged at his cloak. Lord Tawakan. He spun around, ready to summon Firmus, of all people. Lenine nearly choked. Firmus is a real physician? She hurriedly added, it's a man, that would be inconvenient. Usually an old midwife takes care of me. Tawakan instantly changed course to find the midwife. Wait, Lord Tawakan. She's not in the castle right now. He began scolding the absent woman for negligence. Things were getting more and more complicated. Lenine finally patted the bed. Just sit down for a moment, please. He obeyed, eyes fixed on her, curious about every tiny detail she was inventing. In the end she told him a half-truth. Someone had claimed to know about Tawakan's past, so she had tried to investigate, but before she could hear the whole story he had caught her. The hurt look on his face made her feel guilty. She comforted him with a few soft words and insisted she really didn't need a doctor, she was perfectly fine. Her lying face was adorably obvious, cheeks flaming, hands clasped politely in her lap. She took a deep breath. I've decided to tell you the truth. Before she could say another word, Tawakan leaned in close, almost nose to nose. May I kiss you? Lenine froze, stunned. He explained seriously that he needed permission each time. She shook her head, reached up, cupped his cheek, and pulled him down beside her. I don't want you to ask every time you want to do that. Her eyes were full of longing, he looked dazed and overjoyed. Then they kissed, deeply, slowly, soft moans, the wet sounds of lips meeting, eyes closed in bliss. He's too good at this, she thought dimly. When he finally pulled back an inch, he traced her swollen lips with his thumb and whispered. So I really don't need permission anymore, right? His gaze was hazy with desire, he leaned in again. Lord Tawakan, and your highness, may I come in? Firmus's head poked through the door without waiting for an answer, a dark bruise blooming on his cheek. Lenine glanced at the bruise, then at her husband. You hit him? Tawakan instantly looked away, the picture of innocence. I didn't mean to hit him. He absolutely had, in a fit of rage earlier. Firmus, ever the loyal subordinate, only seemed deeply wounded rather than angry. He rubbed his cheek and asked Lenine pointedly. Does this sort of treatment from House Klinefeld happen often? Lenine sighed. Unfortunately, yes. The exploitation began the moment my father took the throne. The 7 great families, led by Klinefeld, forced him into that ruinous loan agreement, and it has bound the crown ever since I succeeded him. Firmus scratched his head and let out a long sigh, while Lenine lowered her head in shame, mortified that Tawakan kept having to witness scenes like this. All this time he had been standing beside her, patient and silent, though clearly not pleased. Seeing her hands twisted anxiously together, he spoke softly. Princess, open your hands. If you keep clenching them like that, the bruises will only get worse. I don't want to see any marks on your body, unless I'm the one who put them there. Lenine's mouth fell open, she stared up at him. Firmus flushed crimson on her behalf. You're going to hurt me, she asked innocently. Tawakan kept tending her wrists, voice low and deliberate. Don't you understand what I meant? She tried to guess, making Firmus nearly combust from second-hand embarrassment. Tawakan sighed and shook his head. Not physical wounds. Don't misunderstand. Lenine gave a shy smile, she understood perfectly now, and it wasn't crude at all. Firmus cleared his throat and moved on to business. The simplest way to deal with those troublemakers is to seal the fate of the entire lot, heirs included. One clean sweep. Lenine went pale with fear. Even Tawakan exhaled wearily at Firmus's bloodthirsty attitude. She pleaded, for Nock's sake. I just want a gentle resolution. Then she remembered. Timidly raising a hand, she said. Yesterday near the temple. I met a priest who was bleeding. Tawakan spun around, eyes sharp as knives. Please, tell me everything. Moments later, Tawakan and Firmus stood at the castle gate, ready to mount. Tawakan issued several urgent orders. Firmus grinned mischievously. Are you in such a hurry to get back to the princess and finish what you started? Tawakan's eyes flashed murderous red, an expression Firmus knew all too well. Firmus raised his hands in surrender and added. Your princess is too pure. 25, yet she seems barely 18. Tawakan ignored the nonsense, seized Firmus by the shoulder, and leaned in close. There's an old man near the temple. Find him. Bring him quietly. No one must notice. Firmus's eyes gleamed with eager curiosity. Tawakan continued in a whisper. He knows who I am. Anyone trying to hide what they know about me is dangerous. He added, stash the old man somewhere discreet. Understood. Several horses galloped off at once. Tawakan strode back into the castle, face dark. Instead of returning to the earlier conversation, he went straight to the dungeons. The corridors grew colder and gloomier. 2 guards reported on the prisoners. The cell door swung open, Tawakan ordered them to lock it behind him and leave. Inside, old Linden sat chained to a chair. The moment he saw Tawakan, he began his usual tirade. If you dare kill me, Nock will never let you get away with. He never finished. Tawakan's boot sent him crashing to the floor with a heavy thud. From the neighboring cell, Lapit screamed, Uncle. Get away from him, you bastard. Tawakan ignored the shouting. He loomed over the old man, eyes blazing. Tell me what you know. Linden opened his mouth to argue. Tawakan's boot shifted to the old man's right hand. A faint, sickening crack mingled with Linden's shriek. Shut up, Tawakan said coldly. What is it the princess doesn't know? Exactly. Think very carefully before you answer. Linden, now perfectly obedient, rasped out. Lenine is completely in the dark. That girl has no idea how her father became king, nor how the Treaty of Leesbury was signed. The only reason House Arsak can play at being royalty is because of us. His voice rose with bitter indignation. If she ever learned the truth, she wouldn't dare treat me like dirt for even one more second. Tawakan's boot pressed against Linden's throat, cutting the words short and forcing a choking cough. Lapit, watching his uncle writhe, trembled like a leaf. Tawakan's steel-hard foot pressed down again. Linden squealed. Mind your tongue, Tawakan said, voice calm and ice-cold, those pale green eyes staring down from above like judgment itself. You are speaking to your lord. He asked a few more curt questions, then, in a surge of irritation, crushed one of Linden's hands beneath his heel and turned to leave. At the door he paused and looked back with a glare that could freeze blood. Remember this well, from now on, Princess Lenine is the sole reason the Tawakan armies would ever march to war. And the child she carries is mine. If I hear even a whisper of any other rumor, I will cut your tongue out. He never once glanced at Lapit, yet the last words were clearly meant for him. The cell door slammed shut. Inside, the Klinefelt uncle and nephew immediately began snarling at each other, blindly dreaming of overthrowing the barbarians and, on Lapit's part, still fantasizing about Princess Lenine, to his uncle's weary disgust. The rest of the day passed. Lenine sat upon the throne, receiving the new financial minister who had replaced Masalu, a man named Aland. From his demeanor alone, he seemed diligent and responsible. Yet the news she calmly delivered made even this seasoned official flinch. Lenine spoke softly, her voice carrying the quiet weight of sovereignty. May the blessings of the god shine upon those who willingly accept the sovereign's will. As the reigning sovereign of Nock, I intend to convene the Great Council of Nock. I ask that you assist me in preparing everything required. Arland froze, eyes wide with disbelief. The Great Council. Are you certain, Your Majesty? He was a minor noble from one of the kingdom's poorer houses, plain-spoken, plainly dressed, utterly unlike the haughty aristocrats Lenine usually faced. The last time it was summoned was 14 years ago, wasn't it? He stammered. It has never been called again since. Indeed. That had been the day the Treaty of Rysbury was signed, exactly 14 years earlier. To call it once more would send a shock through the realm no less violent than on that fateful day. Lenine nodded calmly. Correct. We have 2 pressing matters to settle. First, the election of a new high priest. Second, a trial. The trial of Lyndon Kleinfelder, leader of the aristocratic delegation. Arlen's jaw dropped. Pardon. The words trial of Lyndon Kleinfelder stunned him far more than the council itself. A trial for the head of the delegation? The formal charge is inflicting injury upon a member of the royal family, Lenine answered coolly. That alone is sufficient grounds to summon the 6 great houses. We must set a date at once. Injury. Ah, I see, Arlen muttered, wiping sweat from his brow with his sleeve. Lenine offered a faint smile. For now, please calculate the necessary expenses. You have my permission to use the king's office. Yes, it is my honor. Regaining what composure he could, Arlen bowed deeply and withdrew. With that small task delegated, Lenine still had mountains of work ahead. The first and most urgent, securing a new high priest. If the council is left to decide, they'll simply install another Kleinfelder puppet. I must nominate someone myself, first. Long after Arlen had gone, Lenine remained alone in the council chamber. Seated on the oversized throne, elbows on the armrests, chin resting on the back of her hand, she murmured to the empty air. But I know next to nothing about the clergy. I don't even know where to begin. A small crease formed between her brows. Perhaps I should just go to the temple now. He's probably still there. If I happen to run into him, that would be nice. What would be so nice about running into me? The low, familiar voice came from directly behind her. Lenine jolted, nearly smacking her own face with her hand. Huh? She hadn't heard him enter. Tewakan was already approaching, leisurely, as though he had been watching her the entire time. All she managed was a strangled syllable of surprise. He reached out and gently brushed her cheek, his expression perfectly relaxed, as if he had predicted every bit of her reaction. I didn't go to the temple. But why not? I remembered there was something I still had to do. What was it? Does it concern me? No. In the dungeon. The dungeon, where the Kleinfelders are being held. A shadow flickered across Lenine's eyes. What did you do down there? Returned something to him. Huh? Before the shock could leave her face, Tewakan took her right wrist and lifted it gently. I thought I should at least manage this much, he said quietly. As your fiancé. So, you bruised his wrist? That was the plan. He turned out far weaker than I expected. It snapped instead. Her lips trembled from the shock, then curved into a tiny, involuntary smile. I bet he's never experienced anything like that. Just imagining it makes me laugh. You're not angry? If his bones are that fragile, it couldn't be helped. Tewakan bent his head and pressed his lips to the bruise on her wrist. A rush of heat spread from the point of contact, flooding through her entire body. The bruise no longer hurt, instead, it awakened memories of something else entirely. There's one more thing, he murmured against her skin. I actually made a mistake. Lord Tewakan made a mistake? That doesn't sound like you. A genuine mistake. I hadn't meant to break the wrong wrist, left instead of right. So I broke the right one too. Lenine's expression turned strange, neither a smile nor a frown. So both of his wrists. Unfortunately. Because you made a mistake. Yes, a real mistake. You rarely make mistakes. I can when the situation calls for it. You. Lenine bit her lip as hard as she could, just to keep the laughter from spilling out. He wasn't the sort of man who made clumsy errors. It had been deliberate. Yet he shouldn't have done it. With the upcoming assembly, if Lyndon Kleinfelder told everyone that both his wrists had been broken by her fiancé, chaos would erupt. And still. He whispered, lips still grazing her wrist. I should have done it sooner. Why would you say that? If I'd known it would make you this happy, princess. I would have done it long ago. That's, haha. That was the end of her defenses. Light, helpless laughter poured out of her. While it subsided, Tewakan softly kissed the palm of her hand. You really shouldn't have. She laughed until her stomach hurt and tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. Tewakan reached out with his free hand and gently wiped them away. I'll be more careful next time. He said it, but he was already fully prepared to make another mistake whenever necessary. Sometimes a little accidental misstep was exactly what the moment required. Lenine, still catching her breath, managed. There'll be a trial soon. He'll definitely tell the other delegates that the royal family injured him. Is that a problem? Most likely. He gave a soft sigh. Then perhaps I shouldn't have. Seeing the faint regret on his face, Lenine's heart softened. She quickly grasped his collar with her other hand. But still, thank you. Even though I just made everything harder for you? This is the first time anyone has ever done something like this for me. She hadn't meant for her voice to tremble, but it did. All she could do afterward was let out a silent, shaky breath. It had been so long since she last felt this. The feeling of having someone beside her, angry on her behalf, willing to do anything to protect her. Since ascending the throne, she had nowhere to hide, nothing to lean on, no place for her heart to rest, no one to listen to her burdens. Only ever-increasing weight. Tewakan was the first. No matter how heavy the burden, no matter how fierce the fight, he never hesitated, he simply took it all upon himself. Not just willing, he just did it. As naturally as breathing. Lenine released his collar, lifted her hand, and let her fingertips brush lightly across the exposed skin of his neck. Oh, what do I do now? I just want to kiss him. She wanted, so badly, to kiss him. Yet for some reason Lenine felt a sudden, overwhelming shyness. She had been the one to kiss him first, once before. It should not have been this hard. Perhaps because back then she had been innocent, completely unaware of what a kiss with this man truly meant. Now that she knew exactly how devastating it felt, she could not bring herself to take the first step. Tewakan's voice was low, almost embarrassed. I'm not very good at this sort of thing. He glanced down at the fingers that had just brushed the side of his neck. Lenine blinked. This sort of thing? He caught her wandering hand, drew it gently to his cheek, and sank to one knee so their eyes were level. I don't know much about women, he said quietly. And I don't have much experience. Even if you give me a signal, I might miss it entirely, or misunderstand. Then he took her other hand. His voice softened further as he guided it to his opposite cheek. Until, at last, Lenine found herself cradling his face cupped tenderly between her trembling palms. This look you're wearing right now, he murmured, does it mean you want me to kiss you? Lenine was silent. He claimed to have no experience, yet here he was doing exactly this. Saying exactly this. Tell me if I'm wrong, he continued, the corner of his mouth lifting. Otherwise I'll take it as permission and do as I please. He was absolutely lying. She wasn't sure how she knew, but she felt it in her bones. This man was frighteningly good at lying when he wanted to be. Lenine's answer came out barely louder than a breath. You're not wrong. A low, pleased chuckle rumbled in his throat. So you do want me to kiss you? He already knew the answer, why torment her by asking? Then do one small thing for me, he said, and I'll kiss you. Was he seriously bargaining for a kiss? If you don't want to, she began, cheeks burning. He didn't let her finish. Just now you were muttering to yourself. You said something would be wonderful. He leaned in a fraction closer. You said it would be wonderful if you ran into me at the temple. Lenine's voice faltered. I just thought if I went there, I might see you and then we could walk together. And I thought it would be nicer than going alone. So you prefer my company to being by yourself? Her gaze darted everywhere, unable to settle. Answer me, he pressed, gentle but relentless. Are you happy when you're with me? She swallowed. You already know the answer. I still want to hear it from your lips. He lowered his head until she could feel the warmth of his breath. Close your eyes. I'll kiss you. She had fully intended to keep them open, just to spite his teasing. But the moment the words left his mouth, her eyelids fell shut as if they had a will of their own. His whisper brushed her ear, right before their lips met. Offer your lips, to me. He was demanding so much of her today, the thought flickered through her mind, yet Lenine parted her lips without hesitation. And if he kept doing this forever? Her heart already knew the answer, it would be fine. Anything Tewakan asked of her, she would give gladly. To tell him, right here, right now, that she was happy, that she liked him, that she wanted him, Lenine obediently, trustingly opened her lips and surrendered to the kiss that followed. Tonight, I will tell him. The faint sound of running water drifted from the bathroom, Tewakan washing his face before bed. After changing into her nightgown and finishing her own routine, Lenine sat at the vanity, slowly brushing her hair while silently rehearsing the words she had to say. I'm not pregnant. Back then I lied so I could refuse your proposal. I'm sorry for deceiving you. The child I will one day bear will be yours, and no one else's. That was how she would say it. She was so lost in thought she didn't notice how badly her hands were shaking. It shouldn't be this difficult, yet her mouth was dry and her heart pounded painfully. Should I also tell him I have no experience at all? That thought made her stomach twist even tighter. If she admitted she had never slept with Rafet, the conversation would inevitably turn in that direction, and the mere idea made her want to sink through the floor in shame. He must have experience, surely. She remembered what he had said earlier today. I don't know much about women, and I don't have much experience. Not much was very different from none at all. And he was so effortlessly good at everything, it was hard to believe he was nearly as inexperienced as he claimed. But the thought left a strange, jagged feeling inside her chest. So, he has done these things with other women? She couldn't stop herself from wondering. How many times had he kissed someone else with that same intensity, then stared at her lips afterward with lingering regret? When that woman asked why he had suddenly pulled her close and kissed her, had he also whispered, "Because you're too lovely," the way he had whispered it to her? Lenine's mood plummeted without warning. It was irrational, but a quiet ache bloomed in her chest. He was taking so many of her firsts, yet she could give him none in return. She knew it was unfair to feel that way. She had no right to be hurt by his past. He doesn't know I've never been with another man. He might even feel worse about it than I do. So she resolved to be honest. She would tell him he was her first, and then she would ask about the women he had known before. It probably wouldn't change anything, but she still wanted to hear it from his own mouth. Yes. Tonight. Tonight they would finally speak plainly. Knock, knock. A soft knock sounded at the bedroom door. Who is it? Lenine called. The water was still running in the bathroom, it definitely wasn't Tawakan. She glanced toward the sound, then walked to the door. Yes? It's me, Princess, came Mrs. Flambert's quiet voice. Lenine opened the door with a small, relieved smile. You're back. Thank you for staying out so late. The older woman looked exhausted, her face shadowed, understandable after being gone all day. I know you must be about to sleep, Mrs. Flambert said hesitantly, but may I speak with you for a moment? Of course. Please come in. Thank you, Princess. Mrs. Flambert stepped inside, but the instant she heard the faint noises and running water from the adjoining bathroom, she froze, eyes widening. He is here, she whispered, voice suspiciously low. Yes. He's in the next room. Then we must speak somewhere else. Pardon? Mrs. Flambert seized Lenine's hand and tugged gently but urgently. This is not something he can hear. You mean, not in front of Lord Tawakan? Exactly. She nodded firmly, yet when Lenine looked closer, it wasn't mere stubbornness in her eyes. It was fear. Lenine glanced back toward the bathroom. What could be so terrible that Mrs. Flambert refused to let Tawakan overhear? A chill crawled up her spine. If it was that dreadful, she wasn't sure she wanted to know either. But she had to. If it concerned him, she could not cover her ears. She had to know. Biting her lip, Lenine nodded. Then let's go. Silently, without making the slightest sound, Lenine and Mrs. Flambert slipped out of the bedroom and vanished into the darkened corridor. They ended up in the small audience chamber at the far end of the southern tower. No one would come looking for them at this hour. They could not go to Mrs. Flambert's room. Tawakan's old quarters lay directly opposite, now used as Firmus's office. Lenine closed the door softly behind them. Now you can speak freely. What happened? Mrs. Flambert drew a long breath. I went searching for the old man, just as you asked, Princess. And I found him. The tale took time to tell. Finding him had been difficult enough. The temple steps were under repair, the entrance was always crowded. The old beggar had lost his usual comfortable spot, so she had wandered the alleys for hours, asking after him. And that was when she witnessed something strange. A temple servant was bringing the old man water and bread, yet the old man struck him with his staff. Lenine frowned. Again. You saw it too, didn't you? Mrs. Flambert continued. I wanted to step in, but the servant stopped me. He said the old man needed to be beaten more. The blows continued, several times. The old man looked furious, so I was a little afraid to approach, she admitted. But I had your orders. I asked him to speak of you. And he said? Almost exactly what Lenine had heard before. The sins of Nock have returned. The daughter of House Arsak will spill blood. I didn't understand a word of it, Mrs. Flambard said. A beggar speaking like a high priest? So I asked him to explain plainly who he meant. I think he answered, but his voice was too weak. I told him to write it in the dirt instead. His hand shook terribly. He had only managed a few crooked letters when Firmus suddenly appeared with a squad of Tawakan mercenaries. Firmus claimed he had come looking for a servant named Klima. The servant fled, the mercenaries seized the old man instead, supposedly to question him about the runaway's whereabouts. Mrs. Flambard lowered her voice. But something felt wrong. The old man is nearly blind. How could he possibly have seen where the servant went? She had remembered Lenine's request to keep the search secret, so she melted back into the crowd. Then came the next odd detail. After the old man was dragged away, she noticed that someone had deliberately scuffed the ground with a boot. Right over the very spot where the old man had been trying to write Tawakan's name. Lenine exhaled softly. I hadn't even noticed him writing it at the time, Mrs. Flambard whispered. He spoke too quickly, I was straining to hear. But it was uncanny, the only part erased was the fragment of a name already scratched into the dirt. Lenine said nothing. It was more than uncanny. She knew how sharp Firmus was. Nothing he did was accidental, nothing was ever meaningless. Yet why would he do that? The timing was perfect, too perfect. Lenine had only just mentioned the old man to Tawakan. Tawakan had insisted the beggar could not possibly recognize him after so many years. And then, almost immediately, Firmus appears at the temple looking for a servant named Klima, only to take the old man instead. As though Tawakan himself had ordered the old man silenced. Mrs. Flambard went on, voice trembling slightly. What did he mean by the sins of Nock? He seemed certain of something. That's why he tried so hard to write that name. Lenine whispered. The sins. The old man had said Tawakan would take revenge. Revenge required a grievance. The slaughter of an entire family would certainly nurture one. Yet Tawakan claimed he had forgotten everything because it was too long ago. They said the daughter of Arsak would spill blood. Yet Tawakan insisted he had come to claim the daughter of Arsak as his bride, because he did not want to lose his childhood fiancée. Which was the truth? You couldn't read the name he was writing? Mrs. Flambard shook her head regretfully. I'm sorry, Princess. His hand shook too much, the letters were barely formed. I thought I saw a P, maybe, but I can't be sure. That's all? I'm truly sorry. The Tawakan arrived too suddenly. Doubt upon doubt, piling higher. Yet still Lenine wanted, more than anything, to believe Tawakan. She asked hesitantly. When I was very small, was there ever a betrothal arranged for me? Mrs. Flambard blinked. Whenever would that have been? If I count back, about 20 years ago. You were still a tiny child then. A betrothal at that age would be unusual. Yes, but if the other child was also small. Then it would have been a family arrangement. Do you remember anything like it? Mrs. Flambard smiled sadly. I've only served in the palace for just under 16 years, Princess. Do you remember? The first time I met you was on your 9th birthday. Such a brave, grown-up little girl. The queen was ill, yet you never whined, you wanted her to rest. Lenine nodded faintly. Yes. I only met you when I was 9, when you became my nurse. So it must have been before that. Then I never heard of it. Which means it was either never officially recorded, or it never existed at all. Tawakan had once said something similar, he knew he had been betrothed, but perhaps it was only a passing remark from his father. Lenine turned abruptly. Then there would be no record in the royal archives, would there? I wouldn't know for certain. I'll look myself. The royal records were surely kept somewhere in the king's office. Please, let there be even a single trace. Mrs. Flambard called after her. Princess, where are you going? Why suddenly mention an old betrothal, and right after speaking of that man? Lenine stopped. Because he and we were betrothed once. Mrs. Flambard stared, speechless. Pardon? You, with whom? As far as I know, Lord Kleinfelder was never. With Lord Tewakan. Mrs. Flambert's hand flew to her mouth. What? 20 years ago, Lenine said quietly. I'm not certain of the exact date, it was too long ago. But he remembers it. That's why he proposed to me. Then, he is originally from Nok? Yes. He said after his entire family was massacred, he left Nok. Mrs. Flambert murmured. How very strange. Lenine brushed her hair back, worry plain on her face. He says he has forgotten everything because it was too long ago, and that's why he proposed. But I keep. Her voice cracked, she drew a long, shaky breath. I keep thinking the worst. What if the late king was the one who killed his family? What if that's why the old man keeps saying I will spill blood at Lord Tewakan's hands? Mrs. Flambert shook her head fiercely, horrified. Princess, what are you saying? The late king was a good man, merciful, wise, and kind. It is unthinkable that he would slaughter an entire family. That thought is utterly absurd. Then why does the old man keep repeating it? That is. Lenine hugged her own shoulders, heart in turmoil. Mrs. Flambert looked at her with sorrowful eyes, trying desperately to comfort her. Think carefully, princess. Does anyone truly know who that old man is? We cannot even be sure he is sane. A man who beats someone simply for bringing him food, how can he be in his right mind? How could such a person know secrets that neither you nor I do? It makes no sense. Perhaps, but he is ancient. He must have lived through things neither of us can remember. But who is he, really? Lenine fell silent. Mrs. Flambert was right. She was putting the cart before the horse. Before fearing the old man's words, she first had to discover who he was. The servant he kept striking must know something, Lenine said. You mean the one who took the blows? That scene alone tells a story no one dares speak aloud. But didn't the servant flee? Or are the Tewakan now torturing temple servants? No, Lenine said. They're hunting him because they believe he is the one who murdered the high priest. Mrs. Flambert gasped, pressing her palms together as if in prayer. What? Truly? That gentle, pure-looking young man? Could the Tewakan have the wrong person? Lenine shook her head. No, we have clues that point to his guilt. But, did you manage to see that servant's face clearly? Mrs. Flambert nodded slowly. By chance, yes. He kept his hood up, you saw that yourself, but the old man hit him so hard the hood slipped off. The servant who had looked so gentle and harmless wore an expression of unbearable anguish. And there were scars across the back of his hand. Lenine's eyes narrowed. That prayer of repentance again, wasn't it? Prayer? Mrs. Flambert asked. It's a penitential rite, Lenine explained quietly. I've heard it demands the penitent scourge themselves with a whip to atone for their sins. Mrs. Flambert pressed a hand to her heart. Good heavens! Even the God would turn away from prayers like that. I feel the same. I wonder what sin that servant is trying to wash away. If he truly committed one, Mrs. Flambert said, then he's no innocent soul. If Klima really was the one who murdered the high priest, and the old man knew it, the beatings made sense. Perhaps Klima even allowed himself to be struck as part of his penance. If the old man was still lucid enough to understand that, then his earlier warnings might not be mere madness after all. The more Lenine thought about it, the stronger the feeling grew, the old beggar knew far more than he had revealed. I have no idea where the Tewakan took him, she murmured. It seems my only choice is to ask directly. Mrs. Flambert looked uneasy. That may be, but if they deliberately hid him, will they tell you so easily? They could keep him away and invent any number of excuses. Perhaps, Lenine conceded. But they will at least have to tell me about the servant. True. Shall I return to the temple tomorrow, then? No, it's far too late. We'll go together in the morning. Do you have the time? If I don't, I'll make it. Thankfully, the new advisor has lightened my schedule a little. Lenine reached out and gently squeezed Mrs. Flambert's hands. You've already done so much. You are the only person I can trust completely. Mrs. Flambert's eyes softened. She smoothed a stray lock from Lenine's forehead with a motherly touch. That is my honor, princess. Now go to bed. Tomorrow will be another long day. Yes, ma'am. They left the audience chamber together and returned to their rooms. By some mercy, Lenine met no one on the way back. Every Tawakan mercenary usually stationed nearby had been pulled away, they were all out hunting for the servant Klima. Click. Lenine's fingers had barely touched the doorknob when the door swung open from the inside. Where have you been? Tawakan was already there, framed in the doorway as though he had been waiting all along. Lenine startled, taking a half-step back. I just went to talk with my nurse for a little while, she answered, swallowing hard. Her voice came out strangely calm. She had known from the start that lying to Tawakan was pointless. He must have heard them speaking, heard them leave while he was still in the bathroom. I told you I asked her to run an errand, she continued quickly. She ran into Lord Firmus outside and felt guilty for not finishing what I asked. I walked her back and told her it didn't matter anymore. I see, Tawakan said, nodding as if nothing were amiss. Then he held out his hand. Aren't you coming in? Lenine stared at the outstretched palm for a moment before finally placing her own in it. His hand was the same as ever, so warm it sometimes felt feverish, so large it seemed capable of swallowing the entire world. Even after they stepped inside, he did not let go. As they passed the enormous bed in the center of the room, Lenine tried to lighten the air. Are you planning to escort me all the way to my bedroom? No. To reach her room, one had to pass through his first. Beyond the bed stood two doors, one to the bathroom, the other to the small chamber that lay between their bedrooms. That little room had once been called the King's Gallery, filled long ago with rare treasures and extravagant paintings for the king and queen. Now it had stood empty for so many years that Lenine sometimes forgot it even existed. Tawakan opened the gallery door. I'm coming with you. What? I want to sleep beside you again. Like last night. The familiar ache surged through her chest, that feeling of her heart being squeezed upward, relentlessly. Every time it rose, her throat burned and she could barely breathe. I thought, his voice softened, we had grown a little closer. Was I wrong? She said nothing. He was probably right. And that was exactly why the doubts hurt so much. Even after everything Mrs. Flambard had just told her, Lenine still did not want to hate him. She only wanted reasons to defend him. If the late king truly had slaughtered his family and driven a small boy into exile, then that sin belonged to the blood of House Arsak. Perhaps he really had forgotten the past and simply wished to marry her. 20 years had passed, after all. But even if I was only a child who understood nothing, if you want me to atone for the late king, I will do anything you ask. Because I love you this much. And maybe he felt the same. It was possible. But, she whispered, I'm a little worried about something. She could not say what she was truly thinking. If she were an ordinary girl, perhaps it would be fine. But as the one who bore knock on her shoulders, she could not make reckless promises. Worried about what? You said, you don't have much experience. A beat of silence. Come again? So, you're clumsy, aren't you? Another silence. I'm a little nervous, she added, being with someone clumsy. In truth it was the complete opposite. She was terrified that he was far too skilled, while she was pathetically, hopelessly inexperienced. The memories of what had already happened between them flashed unbidden across her mind. But she could not say that out loud. She still hadn't even managed to tell him she wasn't pregnant. Tawakan stared at her for a long, long moment, then let out a low, incredulous laugh. You're insane. At first he had gone rigid, but now the corners of his mouth curved into a slow, dangerous smile. What exactly did you think I meant when I said I wanted to sleep together again? Lenine had no answer. Her burning cheeks answered for her. If I'm not good enough, he murmured, stepping closer, will you hate me? I understand, she stammered. Good night. She spun around and tried to flee into her room. Bam. The door she had barely cracked open slammed shut again. Tawakan's hand shot past her shoulder and pushed it closed. Pinned between the door and his body, she could not move an inch. How good do I need to be to satisfy you, princess? His arms slid around her waist, he brushed her hair aside and pressed his lips to the nape of her neck, trailing slow, deliberate kisses across her skin. His other hand threaded into her hair, fingertips grazing her ear before sliding down the column of her throat. No. I didn't mean. No. But you just said you were worried about my lack of skill. His fingers paused at the neckline of her nightgown, toying with the thin fabric as if debating whether to tear it apart. Feeling that, Lenine bit her lip so hard she nearly drew blood. Fortunately, he whispered against her skin, "Your reaction tells me I'm not so clumsy that you'd hate me." His hand left the fabric, traveled upward again, throat, chin, lips. His thumb gently pried her lower lip free from her teeth. "You'll hurt yourself. I told you this afternoon, unless the mark is made by me, I don't want to see another bruise on you." That's. She was trembling too hard to form a sentence. "Don't do that again," he said softly. "Promise me." Her lips already parted, he cupped her chin, turned her face toward him, and slowly rubbed his own lips against the tender, bitten flesh. The sensation was sinful, scorching. One more second and she felt she would melt completely. Why is he doing this? Why to me? What is he hiding? I can't forget those questions. I have to find the answers before Nock pays for his anger. "Stop," she managed, voice breaking. "Please stop." This wasn't what she wanted. In a surge of panic and confusion, Lenine shoved him away with all her strength. "Please, stop." Tewakan stilled instantly. He sensed the seriousness in her voice and simply looked at her, silent, waiting. Lenine hated how her voice shook, but she forced the words out anyway, arms wrapped tightly around herself as if she could hold her own heart together. "If you truly want to prove your skill, find another way. One that makes me eagerly look forward to the day we finally share a bed for real." Tewakan blinked, the heat in his eyes cooling a fraction. "This way isn't right?" "No," she said, more steadily now. "It only makes me feel like you're toying with me. That doesn't make me want to open my heart. And the fact that my body reacts to your touch doesn't mean I'm ready. Preparing my mind matters far more than preparing my body." He studied her for a long moment. "Why aren't you ready?" "That's right now." "No," he cut in quietly. "You don't have to give me a reason. If you're not ready, you're simply not ready." Lenine fell silent. Tewakan shook his head sharply, as though trying to shake off the lingering fever in his blood. "I never meant to demand anything just because you let me a little closer. I only wanted to sleep beside you, literally sleep the way we did last night. I just like being near you." The same was true for her. And the more she felt that way, the blurrier the line became. Ever since learning he was her childhood fiancé, some foolish part of her had whispered that maybe fate had written their names together from the beginning. But that was exactly why she had to refuse him now. "I must have lost my mind for a moment," he said with a wry smile, thinking there was an opening. Slowly, deliberately, he raised both hands, palms open, proof that he would not touch her again. "Go to sleep. Sleep well." "Yes. You too, Lord Tewakan." Click. Lenine flung the door open and fled into her bedroom. "I hate this," she whispered to the empty air. She hated all the lies and uncertainty, hated herself for lying. And she hated seeing him step back like that, as if he would never reach for her again. Tomorrow, it will be better. Tomorrow she would dig deeper into the servant's story, try to learn more about the old man. She might even demand to see him outright. Firmus had taken him, so the beggar must be somewhere inside the castle. She would speak to Tewakan about it. He had no right to interfere. And if she uncovered the truth? Her thoughts stopped dead. She didn't know what she would do, especially with him. What could she even do? "If this keeps up, it'll kill me." Her heart felt as though it were burning to ash. Lenine stumbled forward and collapsed onto the bed. "For now, just sleep." Lenine tossed and turned all night, never quite falling asleep. When she finally drifted off, the sky outside was already pale with dawn. "It's morning already?" For some reason her body felt heavier than usual. She tried to turn over beneath the blankets and groaned softly. "Why am I so exhausted, and so cold?" Her forehead and back were damp with sweat. She burrowed deeper into the covers, wondering if she had caught a fever. Then a cool, slippery sensation slid between her thighs. She jerked fully awake. My courses. They had come several days early. Why now of all times? Lenine threw off the blanket and stood, only to see small crimson stains already blooming across the white sheets. "I have to clean this right now." She was frantically stripping the bed when a soft knock sounded at the door. "Knock, knock. Are you awake?" Tewakan's voice, low and calm. Lenine's face drained of what little color it had left. Why did everything have to happen this morning? The most urgent thing now was to hide the blood. She hurriedly smoothed the sheet back into place, flung herself onto the mattress, and yanked the blanket up to her chin, covering every trace. Yes, what is it? I came to wake you. You overslept. Overslept? Really? More importantly, why was he the one waking her? I'm not feeling well. I'll get up soon. Not feeling well? A pause. I'm coming in. No, please don't. Too late. The door opened firmly and Tawakan strode in. Linene clutched the edge of the blanket with white knuckles, pulling it all the way to her neck. Where does it hurt? I'm fine. Please go. Your face is white as paper. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, ignoring her protests, and pressed the back of his large hand to her forehead. You're burning up. I'm really not. I'm all right. All right? Looking like this? The more worried he sounded, the paler she became. She tugged the blanket higher, until only her eyes showed. Just go. I can manage on my own. I know you won't. Lower the blanket a little. When his fingers brushed the edge of the fabric, Linene panicked. Don't touch me. She hadn't meant to snap so harshly. Tawakan's hand froze midair. His expression turned still as a frozen lake at dawn. Are you angry about last night? No, please leave. I can't. I need to know why you're angry, princess. I'm not angry, He gently but firmly caught the wrist she was using to clutch the blanket. Still going to say you're not angry? From his angle he could not see what she was hiding. To him, her violent refusal looked like complete rejection, like she could no longer bear even the thought of his touch. To Linene, that same blanket was the only barrier between her secret and total humiliation. Please stop and leave. Just one day and everything has changed this much? He tried again to ease the blanket away from her face. Don't. In blind panic she shoved at his chest with all her strength. Push. It barely budged him, but it was enough to make him step back half a pace. In the struggle the blanket slipped down, just enough. Tawakan's gaze dropped to the bed. What is this? Linene's mind went blank. The crimson stains on the white sheets and the hem of her nightgown seemed to grow 100 times larger under his stare, impossibly bright, impossible to miss. She couldn't think of a single excuse. Don't look. She screamed, frantic, and tried once more to push him away. Click. Tawakan's hand closed firmly around her wrist. Don't move like that. Linene trembled from head to toe. He gently but irresistibly pressed her back down onto the bed. Bewildered, she stared up at him and saw beads of sweat on his forehead. I'm fetching the physician, he said, voice tight. Stay right here. What? Not even an inch. Don't move. With that, he bolted from the room. Only after the wave of panic receded did Linene realize he had completely misunderstood what the blood meant.